What do you think about Silicon Valley? Is there a network effect? What's happening in Silicon Valley or perhaps Singapore now or Dubai, these special places? And basically the question is, if you want to change the world, do you actually need to go to these kinds of places, or now you can do it from Madrid, for example?
So I'm gonna pick out the word need to.
Mm-hmm.
No, you don't need to. No, you do not need to move to Silicon Valley. You'll do perfectly fine here in Madrid or Barcelona or the tiniest little town. I'm kind of the anti-hustle. I think that sense that you have to be working all the time, taking advantage of every opportunity, is dangerous and damaging. Someone who's doing something that hasn't been done before, who looks at a problem and says, why hasn't this been solved before? Why is this broken? Why is this so difficult? And rather than shrugging their shoulders and just accepting it, says, I'll bet you I can figure out a way. So it's that seeing the world as an imperfect place, but not accepting that, saying, I think I can fix this. Rules are for fools. And that if you apply anything in a rigid blanket sense, you're going to get in trouble, because you have to be able to leave things open to interpretation. So the quick answer is, I'm not rigid about anything. The choice you get is hundreds of good things. And then you've got to say, how do I pick the best of the good things and say yes to those? And unfortunately, have to say no to a lot of other good things.
Thank you very much, Marc, for being here in Madrid, in Spain. It's a pleasure to have your valuable time. And I'm going to go straight forward to some questions we have prepared. What's the best and worst advice you've ever received?
Oh boy, it's funny because it isn't like someone tells you something and you go, oh my gosh, that's it. I'm going to do that from now on. It takes usually a sequence of someone telling you something over and over and over again. Mm-hmm. And so I think I've learned more not from someone telling me something, but from watching people. Mm-hmm. It's also a little complicated because it's not going to be like, do this. So probably the best advice I ever got was when I learned how to try things where I was minimizing the difficulty of doing them, not trying to prepare for the future. I mean, and that's a complicated thing, but watching people make decisions like that, where they say, this is not about the long term. We don't need to get this right forever. What's the simplest way we can do something that'll work now? And that took me a while, because I think by our nature, we want to do things perfectly. And that was by far the most valuable thing I've ever learned, because now, of course, I apply that all the time, and I kind of think it's the key to entrepreneurship.
And you yourself that has watched, been with, and is an entrepreneur that literally has changed the world and have built amazing companies, what would you say are the, let's say, 3 key ingredients every successful entrepreneur needs to have to succeed?
So probably the most important thing is a predisposition to action. People who don't think a lot about a problem, they immediately do something. Because one of the biggest problems is overanalysis, overthinking, planning, studying the problem, forming a task force. And the best entrepreneurs immediately say, what can we do now? So that's number 1. Probably the second most important skill is focus. Is this ability to say, even though there's 100 things that are going wrong, what are the 1 or 2 that I have to get right? And if I get those right, all the rest doesn't matter. So focus. And probably the third thing is what I'll call triage, which is the ability to recognize what is the right thing to focus on. And it's not always obvious, especially when you're doing a startup. You solve one small problem, it leads to the next thing you can accomplish, and that leads to the next thing. And that sense of what direction to go is a critical skill.
And to maintain that focus, what would you say it's your trick on saying no? Because I think your success, I imagine you're a very magnetic person to amazing opportunities and business propositions. So how do you stay focused? How do you say no to
Well, how many
things?
times did I say no to you, Jorge? I think it's maybe 2, maybe 3. Finally, you wore me down.
Yeah.
But
thank you very much again.
It's true that it's unfortunate because I like to say yes. I like people. I like doing this. I like helping companies. But I could spend 100% of my time doing that. And so in order to have some head space so that I can actually think about things, you have to say no a lot. It's the difference at first. I thought, well, if it was a good thing, I'd say yes. And if it was a bad thing, well, I'd say no. But it turns out that's not the choice you get. The choice you get is hundreds of good things. And then you've got to say, how do I pick the best of the good things and say yes to those? And unfortunately, I have to say no to a lot of other good things. But saying no is really, really hard, but really, really important.
Amazing. Going back, what's your definition of an entrepreneur? How would you define this figure?
Quite simply, it's basically someone who's doing something that hasn't been done before, who looks at a problem and says, why hasn't this been solved before? Why is this broken? Why is this so difficult? And rather than shrugging their shoulders and just accepting it, says, I'll bet you I can figure out a way. So it's that seeing the world as an imperfect place, but not accepting that, saying, I think I can fix this.
And you yourself have been an entrepreneur since a very young age, 14 years old, according to my data. If you could speak to yourself of the 14 or perhaps 19-year-old or after university, what advice or what thing would you tell the Marc of? Would you do something different, perhaps?
I have no idea whether doing something. I mean, listen, things have worked out pretty well for me. So it would be very scary to go back and change something. Because, to be honest, you have no idea which aspects of your personality are the things that work, which decisions you made are the good decisions. And even looking back at things which at the time seemed like they were terrible, ended up being fine. And so I think the biggest advice I could give myself would have been relax. Don't worry. I mean, I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life until I was, in my mid to late 20s. And even then, it wasn't the thing that I ended up doing with my life. So these days, young people feel so much pressure to accomplish things, to know what they're going to be doing. And I just say that you don't need to. Life unravels in mysterious ways. And as long as you're taking advantage of each moment, that's fine.
That's amazing. And talking about life, do you think that to be able to build something as giant as Netflix and your other half a dozen ventures you have on portfolio that you've built, do you need the 24/7 work hustle? How do you do the life-work balance? How do you incite that?
Well, the quick answer is no. In fact, I'm kind of the anti-hustle. I think that sense that you have to be working all the time, taking advantage of every opportunity, is dangerous and damaging because you miss out on so much. Now, obviously, this is a very personal thing. So some people are just wired that way, and they like nothing better than working and doing nothing but working and doing it every waking hour. I'm not wired that way. I mean, I enjoy my family. I enjoy the time I spend with my wife. I enjoy getting out and spending time outdoors, and I don't want to work all the time. And I think figuring out how to make those things balance is the key, rather than hustling all the time. And you may have heard this story because I've told this before, but we're here in Spain, and I've been to Spain for the day probably 50 times because I had a job in Paris. I used to live in Paris. I had a job for a big software company, and I was visiting all of our regional offices, one of which was here in Madrid. But I was traveling all the time, and because of the traffic or because of my disorganization, I'd be late, and I'd end up having to run for the plane. And after doing that for like the 100th time, I came to this realization that it almost never made the difference. That half the time you'd run for the plane and you'd pull up and the plane would be taxiing away. Or the other half of the time you'd pull up to the gate and the plane was delayed and you just sit there for half an hour. The running wasn't necessary. One time out of 100 would running for the plane make it. And I vowed then, and this was 30 plus years ago, I would never run for a plane again, and I never have. But it's not about travel, it's about prioritization. Because what a lot of entrepreneurs do is they're constantly running for planes. They're staying up all night working on the details of a presentation, or they're reviewing every word of something. And what I've learned is that's like running for the plane. It almost never makes the difference between success and failure. Either you're going to get the deal already, or you're going to lose the deal already. That little bit didn't make the difference. Totally. And once you've learned that, you realize that I'm going to focus on the things that I really believe will make a difference and be comfortable letting the rest go. And that has allowed me, I think, to get a tremendous amount done, but not working all the time. And it's because I don't do everything. I leave a lot of stuff undone, a lot of stuff broken, a lot of stuff halfway, and I've learned to become comfortable with that.
And what would you say are your non-negotiables in that scheme? Have you now extrapolated this thesis to other aspects of life, or?
Well, that's a good question. There's a saying that I learned from another mountaineer friend of mine, which basically is rules are for fools. And that if you apply anything in a rigid blanket sense, you're going to get in trouble, because you have to be able to leave things open to interpretation. So the quick answer is I'm not rigid about anything. I do apply these principles to everything in my life. I mean, I am pretty religious about picking out which things are important. The whole concept of focus, how like in a startup you have 100 things to do and you pick the one or two. I do that in my life as well. And, obviously one of the big ones for me was wanting to keep my relationship intact, to be able to be an entrepreneur, which, as you probably know, has crazy hours and you're thinking about it all the time, and that isn't usually compatible with forming a relationship with somebody. And I said, no, I'm going to make this work, and I'm going to say the relationship is one of those big focal things, and then you do what you have to do to make that happen. And it means saying no to meetings and saying no to calls and leaving the office promptly at 5 o'clock, and all the things that I did over the years to make sure that remained my priority. Because startups are a very, very demanding mistress. They want you all the time. And you have to say no. I have other things that are important to me.
Totally. The power of saying no.
Yep.
Going back to, you mentioned Paris, Madrid, you've been probably all over the world now. But there's something magical in how we see it here in Spain, in Silicon Valley, right? So what do you think about Silicon Valley? Is there a network effect? What's happening in Silicon Valley, or perhaps Singapore now, or Dubai, these special places? And basically the question is, if you want to change the world, do you actually need to go to these kinds of places, or now you can do it from Madrid, for example?
So I'm gonna pick out the word need to. No, you don't need to. And basically, because I spend a lot of time counseling entrepreneurs and working with early stage companies, I have heard every single excuse in the world of why people haven't started yet. I need to raise money first. I need to get a computer science degree. I need a co-founder. I need to quit my job. I need to move to Silicon Valley or Dubai or Singapore. And all of those are ridiculous. You don't need to do any of those things. You can do this no matter where you live, no matter what your circumstances are, no matter what your job is. Mm-hmm. If you have a great idea, there are ways to start. That's the need to. So no, you do not need to move to Silicon Valley. You'll do perfectly fine here in Madrid or Barcelona or the tiniest little town out in the countryside. So you do not need to. But all things being equal, it's easier there. It's a little better there. And you mentioned it, it's the network effect.
Totally.
You're in, I don't want to, I don't know, I haven't spent enough time in Madrid to know about how it is here. But for example, you're an entrepreneur and you're living in New York City. And after work, you go out to the bar with 6 friends. Yeah, and it's you, a startup person, and then 2 of them are bankers, and you have a lawyer, and you have an accountant, and that's what you talk about. Mm-hmm. In Menlo Park, or in San Francisco, or in Palo Alto, you go out with 6 of your friends, startup guy, startup girl, startup guy, startup girl, startup guy, and you. And so the speed at which information changes, when you talk about something you're doing, the reactions you get, the help you get, the recruiting help, things go a lot faster. And it's not black and white. It's not like Silicon Valley is 1,000 and everywhere else is 1. Mm-hmm. No, it's a grade. And some are better than others. And it kind of depends also on what you're working on, whether it's AI or robotics or blockchain or medicine or fintech. That's going to depend where it's better to be. So the quick answer is no. You don't need to be any place. But the longer, more nuanced answer is, if you have the choice, go where the action is. But don't go there feeling you have to. Figure it out locally, and then when you're ready, there you go.
Picking on AI, what do you think on AI? And also I wanted to ask you, what do you think it's not going to change in 10 years? Business-wise? What it's not going to change is a good question, because I personally am incredibly excited about AI. Certainly, as with any new technology, we haven't figured out how it's going to be used. We haven't figured out what its implications are. Are there risks to it? Absolutely, and there's aspects of it that are scary. But what's exciting from the perspective of an entrepreneur is every system is being disrupted. Every process is being disrupted. Every competitive moat that large companies have is being filled in. If you are an entrepreneur, wow, every single company in the world is a target now, and every single company in the world is vulnerable. So I think that part is unbelievable. There are certain things which I do believe that AI will never is too strong, unlikely to displace. And there's certain aspects of person-to-person interaction which I don't think will be emulated entirely by a machine. There's still something that we, as humans, get from being with each other and feeding off each other and reading each other's faces and sharing stories. What becomes important is that recognizing how much of the job you're doing is that, and how much of it is a lot of bullshit that a machine can do way better. So, for example, you look in the legal profession, and you pay an attorney, at least in the United States, $800 an hour, $1,000 an hour, and I'll pay that for the time they're deeply thinking about my problem because they know me. But I don't want to pay that for all the research and editing and reviewing of documents that AI can do in a heartbeat. And what attorneys and bankers and doctors and teachers and
and architects and every other profession is going to have to adapt to the fact that they've got to separate the things that only they can do and focus on that. And AI is going to take the rest, and they've got to change their business model so that that works.
Awesome. How do you, if you could give me hacks on getting first 1,000 customers, but also hacks on building a global company, are they different? Do you need to operate differently?
Oh, 100%. I mean, because usually for your first 1,000 customers, you don't know what your value proposition is. You don't know what product market fit looks like. So what you're trying to do with your first 1,000 customers is enlist people, for the most part, to be partners with you in figuring that out. You just want people who want this problem solved badly enough that they'll put up with all the missing pieces, all the rough spots. And for me, that's the fun part. I love the first 1,000 customers. That's what's interesting. And so that's what I'm looking for, is I'm not worrying about, is this a scalable business yet? I'm going, who are the people who want this so badly that they will overlook all the stuff that I'm missing? And I'm going to work, and will actually give me feedback that they want it so badly, they're willing to help me give it to them. Once you figure that out, it's a whole different set of problems of now how do you scale.
And in those initial stages, what's the piece of advice commonly given to entrepreneurs that you completely disagree with?
What's the part, what's that early? Everyone's all obsessed about TAM, about how big the market is, and they're picking those first customers based on that. And I'm perfectly fine with having my initial customers be a group which I know there's not enough of them to make a business yet. That's not what I'm looking for. So I think when I see someone's presentation and they go, here's this and look how many there are, I don't care. What I want to know is, for those few you've targeted, if you get that right, does that give you permission to not go after bigger markets? I don't need that first market to be that big.
Do you think, is there any other rookie mistakes that young entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs when they're starting do?
Well, certainly. As I said, there's a million mistakes that young entrepreneurs do. And in some ways, they're just taking the flip side of what you asked at the beginning of our conversation, which is, what are the things you should do? So one of the biggest mistakes is this feeling that I can't launch until I have everything right. And so a product is very complicated. There's lots of pieces to it. There's sign up, there's billing, there's customer service, but all that doesn't make a difference. No one cares if the billing doesn't work. No one cares if your reporting is mediocre. You've got to figure out, what's the one thing I have to get right, A, to attract people to use this, but B, for me to know, am I doing the right thing? And the problem is, when you try and fix 100 things, what you're doing is you're spreading yourself thin. You're spending all your time, you're spending 5% of your time on 20 things. And I want you to spend 50% of your time on 2 things.
Amazing, the focus. Just to end, I have some quick questions for you.
Oh, God.
If you could have dinner with anyone in the world, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
My wife, I guess. But I'm lucky enough, I do get to have dinner with my wife most nights. I'm not... I don't know. I've never really thought about it. It's not something... I'm not big into hero worship.
Oh,
I meet the most incredibly interesting people who have totally unrecognized jobs. I mean, that's my son goes, what's amazing about you is when you'll meet someone who's like a plumber, and you'll spend an hour talking to them because you're curious about something there, so I don't have, it's not like Abraham Lincoln or Einstein or I don't know. I couldn't even answer. I don't think about it like that.
What's the best investment in your life and the best investment under $50? It could be investment in time or any gadget or any...
So certainly educationally, the skill that I think the two skills that I use all the time and cost me nothing really, maybe a little college tuition, was reading and speaking. Not reading, writing and speaking. We talked about what are the skills for people. How does that avoid AI displacing you? And it's communication. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to have ideas, either the idea for the company or an idea what you want to build or how you want to build or how you want to attack the market or anything. And you can either do it all yourself or you can work with other people. And to work with other people, you have to communicate. You have to communicate in writing. You have to communicate speaking. Getting good at those two things are things you can practice for nothing.
Oh, that's awesome. What advice would you give a 5-year-old?
Oh, relax. Jeez, go play. Stop studying. And get off the computer. Get outside. Get dirty. Oh, do something hard. Cry. Do something where the first half an hour sucks, but at the end something cool happens. That's a skill that you can begin learning at 5, and that's a skill that you'll be great for your whole life. Delayed gratification. Type 2 fun.
And an advice you would give a young entrepreneur?
What's that?
An advice you would give a young entrepreneur?
Figure out how to start. Stop making excuses. Every single idea you have, 100,000% of them, if you're clever, you can figure out how to start this afternoon. Start the process of figuring out, is this a good idea or a bad idea? And spoiler alert, it's a bad idea. And it's your job to figure out why it's a bad idea. And you can do that without spending a dime, without spending time. You can do that today.
So you, Marc, you have built ventures that have literally changed the world through technology. But if you could choose one thing to be remembered, what would it be and why? So,
I mean, you're right, is that I've been incredibly fortunate in my business career. So obviously Netflix, God, who would have imagined that? Huge. The company I did after Netflix, Looker, another economically anyway, huge success. And I've had a bunch of IPOs, so I did great. But that's not the thing I want to be remembered by. I want to be remembered that I demonstrated that it is possible to do all those things and still stay married to the same woman, to still have my kids grow up knowing me and liking me, best I can tell, to still get out and go surfing and mountain biking and climbing and backcountry skiing and all the things that I do. That you do not need to give up all those things to be successful. It's possible to do all of that.
Thank you very much, Marc. You're an amazing entrepreneur, but also an amazing person, and we really appreciate this time you have given us. It's truly life-changing. Thank you for your time. And
Jorge, it's my pleasure. I've got to throw one last thing in, which is one thing that I mentioned earlier about how I said no like 3 times. And it wasn't you coming back and being pushy. It was demonstrating that you took this seriously. And that's kind of what flipped the switch. So persistence, but also sincerity. So
thank you very much. Thank you. I really goosebumps. Thank you very much. And see you on the next time.